How you doing, guys? Today we are in the shop. We're going to work on a senior, but I wanted to kind of present a topic that I get a question on from time to time is how do you set up a throttle on a vintage small engine? You know, like if it's on a wheel horse, RJ, a senior for that matter, or some other kind of small equipment. Typically, from what I've seen or what I've experienced is Clinton engines, Kohler engines, this Wisconsin engine, they're all about the same. The process is the same. In other words, getting your throttle to get to idle and then on full throttle, making sure that you have good engagement of the governor. So today what we're going to do is we're going to do a duality video. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. We're going to talk about the throttle setups on a senior, a wheel horse senior, as well as how we set the throttle up in order to have all of it work nice and smooth. All right, hopefully you'll find that interesting. Roll the intro. All right, a little bit of boring content. Oh, I know what you're thinking. All your content's boring. Just stand down, soldier. Stick with me for just a second. So, if you're familiar with early wheel horse tractors from like 1954 to 1960, they were, and even before 1954, but that's the time period that I'm most familiar with. There were so many nuances between the tractors, the RJ or the senior. They were built, as you probably know, they were building these in a garage, just like my garage, okay? And they, basically the Pond family did whatever they needed to do to get it done. So parts are not 100% throughout the run. They changed designs, they used different parts, they redesigned parts, and they did whatever they needed to do to get the product finished. From what I've seen on early 1955 wheel horse seniors, not 56s, 55s, the throttle is in actually two different places. Now, 90+% of the seniors that you see or will find is the throttle is located right here on the hood. It bolts right here in these two holes. There's a hole in the hood where the throttle cable runs through and then hits the little bracketry on the engine. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. The early seniors for 1955, which would have the bar style brakes, okay? Later on, they went to a cable style brake, but you actually have a bar actuator. They had their throttles, in some cases, not all, on the hood stand. Now, if you look at my hood stand, okay, and most senior hood stands, there are two holes drilled in this upper stay. There's one right there, and then we have one right there where there's actually a screw. And you can tell that screw is OG. That's been there since this tractor was built. You can see the red paint, you know, you can see the rust style patina. All right. The throttle is located right here. The cable kind of runs down, goes across, comes across here, and then hits the bracket for the governor. When I got my tractor, the throttle was in this location. This is where it was. And when I redid the hood a bunch of years ago, I filled all the holes in with resin because, number one, I wanted to re-drill them and make sure that the hood sits 100% square and straight on the tractor. Ultimately, what I'm going to do, though, is I am going to mount my throttle here in the early version of a senior for 1955. Not because I want to be different, but because if you know about the senior hoods, they are a major pain in the back end to get off. Number one, they slip fit kind of like over the top of the steering column. I would say probably 60% of all the surviving hoods nowadays have a slot cut in the bottom of it. So that way you could just take the bolts and lift it off instead of trying to finagle it around the steering wheel, right? You actually have to take the steering wheel off in order to get the hood off. You also have to take the front engine pulley off in order to get the hood off, okay? It's a process, and that's why you see a lot of them too will also have a hole cut in the top of the hood to get to the spark plug. We're going to try to avoid all that. One of the benefits of moving the throttle here in the factory holes is the throttle cable goes down and under, okay? Which means it doesn't even, it doesn't even involve the hood at all. So if you have got to get the hood off, you have to take these bolts out, but you don't have to unhook your throttle cable and take off the steering wheel. It's just one less aspect if you have to get the hood off. So we're going to go ahead and mount my throttle in the early style position, which is right there. As you could see in some of the pictures, to try to verify that for you, it is a thing. Now, it's not very common, but it is an aspect that was there. And it's only my guess or surmise that throttle location was a carryover from the earlier seniors, either the lever steer or the 54, because you didn't have the hood. So, but in any event, as you can tell, those are original holes. It's evenly patinaed right inside the hole. So that's what we're going to do. All right, let's talk about the actual throttle handle. Okay, so this is my original throttle handle that was on my senior when I got it. I did glass beat it real quick just to clean it up because it was, as you can tell, it was all rusted. And then I just shot it with some engine clear, some duplicolor engine clear, just to keep it nice. Now, with all these throttles, and we'll talk about these in just a second. Actually, this is a good example. We'll get to that. There are these plastic washers that go between the base. Then there's a plastic washer. There's the throttle handle. There's another plastic washer, and then there's a screw with a pinch nut that kind of holds it all together. So this thing actuates smoothly. When I got this, the plastics were completely destroyed, missing. The cable itself was so rusted that the inner core was solid in the sheath. There was no way to save it. The little pinch binder that keeps the end of the solid core, that was completely destroyed. I had to cut it off with a die grinder. So there wasn't a lot of the ancillary things that I could save, but I was able to save the actual lever itself. I went to my parts bin. I collected all of the old throttles that I had, the cables, the inner cores, all of that stuff. And what I did was I basically robbed all the bits and pieces in order to put my original one back together. This is a Western Control. This one actually happened to be a Western Control also. And I see predominantly I've seen Western Controls on seniors. Now, I'm not going to say that that's 100%, but it's from in my experiences. I've seen a lot of seniors, and they typically all have a Western Control on it. Now, again, if that's not completely true, I'm not going to argue with anybody. One of the things that Western Control has is a really big plastic washer that goes on the top. It actually says Western, I don't know if I'm being able to get this. Yeah, you can see it. Western Control, Wichita, Kansas. I mean, it actually says. Now, these washers come in two different colors from my experiences, black and red. This original one for the senior had a red one. It just absolutely disintegrated in my hand. Since I haven't been able to find another red one, I had this black one right here. So I robbed it from this Western Control for mine. The other thing that was disintegrated is there's these little, like I said, little plastic, this is a different control obviously, but it's set up about the same. The plastic washers that go between the bolt and then between the lever and the base. So again, I went around, no, I didn't, maybe I might have stole it out of this one, I don't know. But I got the the little plastic washers, I stole them from another lever in order to put this one back together. This is the main nut, or excuse me, screw that holds it all together. Okay. And then all the other little bits and pieces, which we'll talk about later. I have them soaking in some lacquer thinner just to get all the oil and dirt off. Now, for the cable. I didn't want to put a brand new shiny sheath. I wanted something patinaed to match the tractor, right? Because that's the whole point of this. I want to keep it in its work clothes. I don't want it to look brand new, but I want it to function brand new. I had this cable. This is, I could have used this one, but it's a little too short. I had this one, which was way too nice. I probably would have robbed the center core out of it, but it's too short. I had this control, but this is not the right style control at all. It's pretty rusted, and obviously this is too short. I do have a patinaed, rusted sheath. It's actually soaking in my parts bin, my parts washer, I should say, because it's covered with dirt and oil. And we're going to clean that all up and get that all nice. It's nice and long. That left me that I needed an inner core wire. So I went online, and even Amazon was expensive. It was like $15 for a throttle setup. And ultimately, I'm just going to rob the inner core out of this coil. I'm not going to use any of it. O'Reilly's had this Dorman on the hook. And dude, it was $7. And I was like, oh, yes. Help me help you. That's what it's telling me. The old Jerry Maguire line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to eventually open this up, cut it, take the core out of it, and then set it up for my senior. In a nutshell, that's what, and then like this little thing, which is the cable bind, it's in here in the lacquer thinner cleaning up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this piece right here for us, so that way we can get it mounted, and then we can figure out the cable length, and then I'll show you how to set up the throttle on the governor. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put the throttle handle back together. It's pretty simple. We got a base plate. We need one of the plastic bushing washers that goes like that. The arm goes on top of this. Then we're going to use our Western control plastic washer that goes on top, so it looks like this. We drop the screw through. We have a little tension spring. We got to put that on the back side. And then there is a lock nut, a pinch nut, to just kind of hold it in place so you can set the tension so this thing operates nice and smoothly, and it'll stay put. The vibration of the tractor won't make it go back to idle, or it won't make it go to full throttle. So let's go ahead and get this together. The only thing I like to do is on the surfaces of the plastic washers, I'll just take some regular dinosaur grease, not the synthetic grease, dinosaur grease, because the synthetic crap, it constantly leaks that red shizit everywhere, and I hate that. So I'm just, like not even that amount. Like we're talking that amount on the washers. That way it just moves nice and smooth. All right, let me get this thing together. Okay, now that we have it all together, it's firm but smooth, so it should stay put. It shouldn't move around. Plus, we're going to get a little bit of drag from the cable itself, so that should hold it nice and firm. The next thing we need to do is we need to put the cable stop, or the cable pinch, which is this little piece right here. There's a screw that screws in the solid core of the throttle cable, goes through this little tiny hole right there, and then the screw will pinch it in place. That goes in this position on the throttle because the sheath screws in here, and then the solid core kind of runs from this edge
to the pinch, because the solid core is going to run through, oopsie daisy, through that little hole, and then the screw will pinch it down. So just for purpose's sake, so that way we can get this done, I have the screw right here, and we're just going to lightly screw that in, so that way we have it all in place, and that's not going to necessarily fall apart. We do have the 2 mounting screws that go through the frame itself. I am going to run these through a die real quick just to get the rust off, so that way we don't have any issues. I do have to find a couple little, I think these are 1024 bolts, so I got to find some 1024 little star lock washers, so that way these these nuts that hold it onto the hood stand don't back off. So next up, we'll have the throttle pretty much all set up, and we'll get the sheath out of the parts washer, and we'll get that thing installed.
That cleaned up pretty good. It's just going to give a nice vintage feel to it. I got all the grease, the dirt off it. I hit it with the wire wheel just enough to make sure that all in between the coil, it's all clean. You know, there's no dirt in there. Next up, we have to figure out the length of the sheath. How long do we want that? If you're not familiar with these style of throttles, these older ones, you can see that this is threaded on the inside there. Well, that thread corresponds to the coil of the cable sheath. So basically you just take this cable sheath and you just twist it until it threads itself in and tightens down. Next up, we'll take the 2 bolts. We'll go ahead and bolt the throttle to the hood stand. We'll get the screw out. We'll run the cable the way we want. We'll get it to here, and then we'll figure out where we want to trim it down just past this bracket, and we'll talk about the bracket when we get there. All right, let me get that thing screwed in. Let me get that all mounted. Let's get the rough length and see what we got going on. Loosely affixed. I couldn't find any lock washers for these nuts, so when I do mount it for the final time, I'm going to use a little blue Loctite and just tighten them down with that. Overall, that's the position of the throttle. I have the cable running down with a nice smooth arc, coming by the steering box, cutting across, coming across, and then hitting this bracket. Okay, so one of the things that is needed on a senior is this little bracket. Now, the early ones were a piece of band iron, just stick welded together or welded together. Later on, they went to a cast iron bracket. Now, this might be a Wisconsin piece, I don't know, but I do know that I've seen different styles of this. Like I said, band iron, and this one here being cast iron. The early 55 senior that I know of has the one that's all made up with band iron. You can tell it's 100% original based on the patina and the paint. The other thing too is this little piece right here. That is, I don't know, I won't say that it's a senior only item, but all seniors have it. The end of the solid core slides in there, and that little hole, there's a screw that goes down and pinches the end of the cable. And then obviously this is a stock Wisconsin governor spring. I have this thing set to, by the manual, 3,200 RPM top, or that's the highest RPM that it'll go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and trim this down about 3/8 of an inch beyond this, because we want a little bit of the sheath to stick out, and then we want the solid core to go all the way to the cable clamp or the core clamp. You might say to yourself, well, that seems pretty close to the clutch pedal. So let's go ahead, let's get up on the tractor. Let's see how that will work out. Visually, fine.
your feet normally sit here on these pads. I got to get up to the clutch. I mean, we would have to have a major situation to come over here. Okay, so cable, I don't believe will interfere with the clutch at all, because it's a good 4 to 5 inches to the left of it. Next, we say, well, okay, well, if we went to full throttle, and we'll go beyond full throttle, that's like full throttle, right? So we're not going to go there, but full throttle will probably be right about there. If we take our shifter over and down, that's first gear, but if we go all the way up, that's reverse. Even if we went ridiculous, we have just about a finger spacing behind that. That's where it's probably going to live, like right in that area. And that is the highest up and to the left that the shifter will go. We come back down, that's center, go over, that's neutral. If we go up, that's second gear, neutral, go down, we're in third. So this location is totally not going to interfere with the shifter. Let me go ahead, mark that, cut it. I'm just going to put it in the vise, cut it with a hacksaw, so that way it's to length. We'll open up the package, get the core out, and then we'll figure out the length of that also. All right, I've opened up the Dorman box, and I just basically ripped the solid core wire out of the sheath. I'm going to save the sheath. Never know. I might need it, so I'll coil it back up and put it in the shed. We'll keep that for maybe the other day. The center core has this end crimped onto it. Well, obviously we are not going to use any of that. But before I cut it off, I am going to go ahead and kind of take as many of the big kinks, the factory kinks in the core wire, which is amazing. I'm going to just try to get the bulk of them out. So I'm just gently kind of pushing on it in order to get it straight. And that's basically what I did with the sheath also. I just kind of went around and tried to take out the bulk. Like, say right here, there's like a little bit of a bend. I'll just put my finger in the bend and kind of give it a little bit of a push here, trying to get that out of there. You know, and it smooths it out for the most part. Let's see if we can get this thing through the cable sheath. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy. This one seems to be beautiful. That's what we want. Just keep pushing it through. Uh-oh, got a jam up. Where are we? Oh, we're not out, so come on. There we go. All right, it was just a tight spot. There it is. Okay. All right, so now you can see we are way long, right? I got a good amount sticking out. This is the engine side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'll probably cut it somewhere around here. You know, I'll probably have like 6 or 7 inches on either end. Way too long for the application, but I know that we're safe in the sense that we got enough to put it on the tractor, figure out where it needs to be, and then make a preliminary cut. All right, let's get that all set up. Quick interjection. Forgot to say this, or do it actually. Take a paper towel, spray a little WD-40 right in the center of the towel, and in the middle of the cable, not on the ends, in the middle of the cable, take the paper towel and just wipe it on the solid core. That way it has a little bit of a lubrication and it will slide into the sheath easier, number one. And number two, where the bends are, it'll help lubricate it a little bit. So this can all break in, because it's going to take a little time to break in. It's all, you know, every time you do it, it'll get a little bit smoother, a little bit easier. So that's what I do. Maybe it'll work for you. Maybe you don't like that idea, but that's what I'm going to do right now. Put it all back together, put it back on the thing, get it on the tractor. All right, this is starting to look really good. I got these mounting screws snugged down tight so this thing doesn't move around. We had set the tension that it's just firm and smooth on that, so that's all set. This screw for the cable lockdown, that's loose, so I can move this cable in and out without the arm moving, and it moves smooth in the sheath. As you can see, it's wrapped around just as I indicated. I did put the little pinch screw here to hold the sheath down.
I did snug that down fairly well, so that it's not going to slide. I'll go back and tighten it back up a little bit more so that it's permanent. When we look at the cable, perfect. I didn't really want it any further out than the gas tank, so that way you don't see it from the side of the tractor. The hood comes to about right here. So it should be visually, if you look at the side, you're going to see it, right? But when you're anywhere in, what, 360 degrees, I say 345 degrees, you're not going to see the cable. It's going to be nice and clean. So what are we going to do here? So how we set up one of these throttles, this is how I do it, okay? We have our governor arm right here. All the way forward, that's full throttle. Back against the stop, okay? That's the idle screw. We have the governor spring right here, and then we have the cable clamp. So what we need enough length that when we move the arm in this direction, thus pushing the cable through the sheath, we get to this point. So it is, basically ramrodded right to idle. When we pull on the throttle, or I should say slide the throttle this direction, which we pull the cable, this will go in. It draws this little piece closer to the bracket. That in turn, I can't really do it with one hand that in turn, when it gets to full throttle, will start to, as you're giving it throttle, it hits the full throttle stop, and then the spring starts to get stretched. You can see I'm stretching the spring. That's the governor spring. And that's what gives you your spring load in the governor. So when the weights fling out and they push on the arm, right, to get it to go back to idle, that spring is causing the tension, causing the control of the governor. So when you go under load, obviously the engine will start to die. The spring will release itself to let that governor go to a little bit more full throttle. And that's how it's all controlled. So what we're going to do is we want to get it to idle. Make sure this is idle, okay? I want to put the arm basically where I want it. Now, I'm kind of stupid. When I'm in idle, I want this arm to be straight up and down. That's how I want it visually look. I don't want it this way. I don't want it that way. I want it straight up and down. And then when I go to throttle it, it's going to go like that. And then when I hit idle, the arm will be nice and straight up and down. I'm going to pull the cable. I'm going to pull this hard cable up using my lineman pliers until I get it to just about where I want. The end of this gets to just about where I want it to be for idle. I'll attach it, okay, to the, attach the end in the cable clamp. I will come up here, make my final adjustments, okay, tighten down the screw. Obviously, I'm going to have this big, long piece sticking out. I'll make sure it works. It does everything I want. It goes right to idle, and then when we go to full throttle, we have spring tension. Once that's all done, then what I'll do is I will make small adjustments to this screw in order to get my throttle handle to stick straight up at the 12 o'clock. So let's go ahead. Let's get this all lined up. It's going to be easy. I just pull it through, screw it down, screw this, test it, and we'll test it, and then make final adjustments so this thing is nice and straight. It's pretty easy. Same way on a Kohler. It just has that little wheel with the spring. You just ram it to idle. You bring your cable up. You take a look at which hole on the sundial you want, and then you just make small adjustments in order to get it. On a Clinton, it's a little bit different. It's set up a little bit like this. There's like a governor arm that's shaped in an L, okay? The cable comes up, hits that arm. There's a spring between that and the carburetor, and it basically does the same thing. So all this setup that I've just shown you, or theoretically just advised to you, it's the same on all those old engines. Briggs & Strattons are a little bit different. Essentially the same, but a little bit different because most of them have that suction lift carburetor, which is got that weird bracketry and all those stupid arms and little springs, and that's why I don't really work on Briggs & Stratton engines too much, because I don't know, they're good engines, I just not a fan. And then forget about Tecumseh. I don't work on Tecumseh engines, so I don't even know how to do it, and nor do I ever want to know. Listen to that idle. God, that's awesome. Now that it's warmed up, let's, just because I did the carburetor, let's see if it will start up at idle. Now it's warm, but let's just see if it's the throttle's set to idle. Let's see if it'll start. It's on idle. Choke is off. Installed, works nice and smooth. You can see how clean that looks. The throttle handle is exactly where I wanted for idle. So let's go ahead and check it. We'll go to full throttle. So we'll go like this, right? Take a look. See how that spring it opens up. We got good spring load on the governor. If we take the throttle, I'm just going to move this direction. You heard how positively that hit the idle screw, and then when we hit it, that doesn't move. This is it, just enough tension. I did make a little manipulation with the pliers, as you saw, just to get this to line up so it's a nice straight pull in and out. But when we use the throttle, mint. And then the handle end of things, we have idle, and that, it's like, oops, it's like right there. That's where the spring starts to come into play. I mean, you can go all the way, but you're not getting anything more out of it. Like right there. Actually, it's nice. I'm happy with that. Pretty clean. I think I might even use this as a guide to get the kill wire up to the hood. I don't know yet, but in general, that's how I set up a throttle. Doesn't matter if it's on a senior, an RJ, on my rug carpet cut, doesn't make any difference. They're pretty much all the same. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. We're going to be mounting the steering wheel. We're going to be putting the steering links in place, tightening everything down, aligning the wheels, and taking this thing, hopefully, on its maiden voyage in the next video. All right, thank you very much, as always. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below. If you think I've done something a little crazy, mention it. If you agreed with something, mention that too, if you would, please. All right. Until we have another project, you have a great day.